You know that meme where they say they had us in the first half? Well, that's what this episode did. The Book of Boba Fett, episode 4. I started out this episode like maybe 20 minutes into it saying, this is actually worse than episode 3. And this is just what this show is going to be, and it was just bad. But then we get to one certain scene, and after that, everything was pretty amazing. And I'm really, really surprised by this. Now, it did take 4 episodes to get to this type of stuff. That is upsetting. But this episode was a lot better than episode 3, and I'm so glad it was. I was really just dreading it there in the first half of the episode, and I'm glad it finished very, very strong. Chapter 4 of the Book of Boba Fett, The Gathering Storm. This one started out, this episode is mostly flashbacks, I would say. The big chunk of the episode is flashbacks. We see him in his back to tank again, and this is now Boba trying to go after his ship, which is the Slave One, which it should be called at least, but he's trying to go after his ship now. It's been like years apparently since he escaped the Sarlacc. I don't necessarily know how the timeline works here. But, you know, it links up with Mandalorian. So the Mandalorian Season 1, we know how Mando and that guy on Tatooine were facing off against Fennec Shan. We got to see that scene from Boba's perspective. And we all know that Boba is the one that saved Fennec Shan. So it kind of links up to that. It kind of starts off like that. So the first scene in this episode, really the first whole sequence, is Boba trying to save Fennec because she was dying from her gut wound. And they go to this like shop. It's this like cyberpunk this shop here with this terrible music playing in the background with this sequence, but it's essentially the sequence of this guy here on the outskirts of Mos Eisley or whatever trying to save Fennec. And obviously we saw in the Mandalorian where her whole section in her stomach or whatever was all replaced with cybernetics, and this is what happened. So this guy with his cybernetics, he fixes up Fennec, and Boba ends up bringing her back out, and then when she wakes up, he starts talking to her. So that whole sequence there, though, I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. It didn't feel like Star Wars in any possible way. When you start out the episode like this, I'm like, what the hell are we watching? I do not like that beginning sequence there. But then we get to something worse. Boba Fett, he's talking with Fennec. I'm Boba Fett. Fennec's like, Boba's dead. He's like, no, I'm not. And I'm trying to get my ship back. I need your help. And that's the issue. Boba Fett ends up saying, help me recover my fire spray gunship. Boba has officially uttered those words in this show. Even though it could be interpreted as Boba, he's not going to tell Fennec Shan that, let's go get the Slave One, because that's technically the name. Like, she wouldn't really know what the Slave One is. He could have just said gunship as well, but he did specifically say fire spray gunship. I think overall this is Disney trying to change it, which is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. His ship is called the Slave One, and it really pissed me off when I heard this. But if you want to interpret it in the way that Fennec wouldn't really have known the name of the ship to begin with, it wouldn't have mattered to her, I guess that's okay. But I think this is Disney trying to stray away from using the term in the name of the Slave One. They don't use it in this episode, which I just really hope they would have, but they didn't. So that is the big takeaway there in terms of the negativity of this episode, I suppose, the bad parts of it. He called his ship the Fire Spray Gunship, not the Slave One, which is very unfortunate. But then we get to this whole entire sequence of Boba trying to get it back. And before they even do that, you see Boba Fett, he's trying to be all sympathetic and nice towards all these animals, and it's super strange. He's riding around on a bantha with Fennec and everything, and he's being super kind and nice to it. He's like feeding it and stuff. He's being all nice, and he sends it off before he goes and gets his ship because he doesn't need the bantha anymore. I just thought that was strange. I don't know what they're doing there with Boba on that. But then we really get into the whole sequence of, Fennec sent in some sort of like droid to scan out Jabba's palace to go find his ship. And then they essentially break in, they find his ship. I don't really want to go over the whole sequence there. It was kind of boring. It was a little drawn out. But essentially they go in, they find his ship, they break out with his ship. And it's the Slave One. The Slave One, Disney. Just call it the Slave One. I don't get the issue. Nobody had a problem with it. It's the Slave One. I'm going to keep calling it the Slave One every single time I see it. They get away with it, and that's about it. Like, really, honestly, there's not really much else to say. They blast out of that. They blast out of the palace, and they fly away. But then here we get to the scene that really changed the episode. So that first whole part was very boring, and it was drawn out for like the first whole half of the episode. I was really dreading the rest of the episode after that point. I was like, what is going on? And then we get to this part. Boba wants to take out these thugs that killed the Tusken Raiders that he was with. And oh my god, this is what I wanted to see from Boba Fett in this show, and I hope we continue to see it, because it personally wasn't enough for me, but it was really amazing. So Boba Fett, he just freaking flies down in his Slave One. He flies down in the Slave One and just obliterates that entire speeder squad, that entire speeder gang that took out the Tuskens. He wipes them out with a few blasts from the Slave One. He just has no sympathy for these people, and it's just super amazing to see. This right here, this is the Boba Fett I want to see, and I think we might, I'm not going to say we will, because, you know, Disney could really change this up again, but right now, this is the Boba Fett that I want to see in this show, and I'm so happy we got to see this scene, and I want to see more. I want to see more. This isn't enough, but it was truly beautiful to see. Like, he obliterates these people. He doesn't just come down, knock them out with a stick or something. No, he just comes in with the Slave One, just obliterates them. Like, none of them are left standing. They're gone. Like, they're dead. They're definitely dead. It is just, oh my god, that scene was incredible. Absolutely incredible. I love to see that. Incredible action shots here. My favorite scene of the episode by far. Like, oh my god, it was incredible. And then we get to this really weird scene. I actually thought this whole sequence here was really awkward. I don't really know why he did this. It was kind of strange. But Boba Fett wants to go find his armor. You know, he's in seek of his armor. He got his ship back. He's got Fennec Shand helping him out. He wants to go find his armor. We obviously know how that sequence went in The Mandalorian. He went off to fly off and, you know, go after Mando and get his armor back. But before that, he thinks maybe his armor is in the Sarlacc pit. So he goes back to the Sarlacc pit and kind of hovers the Slave One over it like he's going to find it in there or something. Which is kind of strange, because he should know that he had his armor on when he crawled out of the Sarlacc pit. I don't know if he just doesn't remember all the Jawas taking off his armor, but he literally had his armor taken off by the Jawas, and I think he was pretty conscious at that point. I don't know. I guess he was in a weird state at that point. He might not remember, but his armor got taken by Jawas. We saw him kind of groggy, so I don't know if he remembers that. But he's looking for his armor. He doesn't see it. They get a little too close. The Sarlacc tries to grab them, bring them in, and I wish Boba would have done this. But they made this whole sequence about Fennec, you know, breaking loose because they're kind of stuck in the ship a little bit. And she's trying to reach a button to release the seismic charge. And she releases it. It falls into the Sarlacc's mouth and it blows up, kills the Sarlacc, and it lets the Slave One free. And again, I really wish Boba was the one to press the button to release the seismic charge. But it is what it is. It was still really cool to see that. I don't mind. Again, I don't mind Fennec Shand in this show. I don't mind the character at all. I think she's cool. But once again, I gotta say, is this the book of Fennec Shand? Because Fennec Shand takes a lot of charge in this episode once again. It's just like, just let Boba take charge. Like, this is his show. There's no problem with that. It doesn't take away from Fennec's badassery. Like, Fennec is a really badass character. I like Fennec Shand. It doesn't take away from that aspect if you let Boba do some badass stuff too. I'm just saying. And you did that with that whole sequence before. So I'm just saying. We see Boba trying to climb into the dead Sarlacc, try to find his armor. He obviously doesn't find it. And that's about it. We don't really need to see anything else. The flashbacks have caught up to the Mandalorian. And he's still looking for his armor at the end of this, but we don't need to see it. We saw it in the Mandalorian. So it kind of shows this whole flashback. We get to see the whole post-credit scene from the Mandalorian Season 2. We kind of got it replayed for us, and then the flashbacks are done. You know, he's done. He's all healed from the back to tank now. So we're probably not going to see the flashbacks again in this show. It's all caught up to the Mandalorian now, which is kind of cool. We saw how he got his armor back in the Mandalorian. He helped out Mando for a bit, and now we are here. I think the last 3 episodes are going to be fully on Tatooine, dealing with the Pikes, and just how he's going to handle that. But once he gets out of the back to tank, we see that he's fully healed. The droid mentions that he is fully healed, so there is no excuse anymore for Boba Fett to be falling down, getting beat up, and just going right back into the back to tank. There's no excuse for it anymore. If they're going to tell us he's fully healed, he should no longer have to go in there, and unless he's like totally wounded in some terrible way. But I don't want to see that anymore. I want to see a badass Boba Fett. This is what I've wanted for 4 episodes now, and we really haven't gotten it yet. Besides that one Slave One scene, obliterating the gang. So I hope we get to see more of that. I'm just being very hopeful here because the whole second half of this episode was just incredible. Then we got Black Chrysanthemum. He's back. They're not going to waste him and send him off and not do anything else with him. He's back in Mos Espa. He's just kind of chilling in that cantina, and he's watching a group of Trandoshans We all know Wookiees and Trandoshans do not get along. That's been a long hinted thing with Black Chrysanthemum and Trandoshans as well, in episode 2 is hinted at. And he's just watching this group of Trandoshans in the cantina, and he just can't stand them. I think it's just because they're Trandoshans. He just doesn't like Trandoshans. So he walks up to them, he just starts beating them up and presumably just killing them. He's sick of looking at their faces, and he just wants to destroy them. And then you got this last guy here that he's going to deal with. He's about to, kill him, rip his arms off or whatever. And then the lady, the Twi'lek lady who's in charge of the cantina, she walks out and she tries to talk to Black Chrysanthemum and say, all right, you don't need to do this. You're already a great warrior, a great gladiator. You don't need to do this. You don't need to stoop to this level or whatever, which is kind of weird. I don't know what she was really aiming for here. I didn't really think it was going to work, but knowing Disney, I almost thought they were going to do it. I almost thought they were going to actually have him set the guy down and just walk away. But thankfully, they didn't. He ripped his arms off. He didn't care what she had to say, which is super cool. I'm glad that they did that. Disney's not really straying away from that, at least. And I know a lot of people say they want to see some blood in the Star Wars and stuff. You don't need to have blood and gore in Star Wars. They've kind of always strayed away from that. We've had a few scenes every now and then that look pretty gruesome in some way, but generally we don't need it, as long as you can maybe see something like this. At least see a little bit more stuff like this. This is fine. This is totally fine with me. So Black Chrysanthemum, he doesn't care. He just rips the guy's arm off, and then he walks away, and he has a look with Boba Fett, because Boba Fett is seeking out Black Chrysanthemum because he's trying to build an army. And Boba Fett, this is kind of something some people wanted from Boba Fett and Black Chrysanthemum. He recruits Black Chrysanthemum to help him deal with the Pikes, which is kind of cool because it just means we get to see more of Black Chrysanthemum. He's not as wasted as we thought he might have been in episode 3, and now we get to see more of him be more badass, but helping Boba Fett, which is kind of cool because Boba Fett's just kind of trying to build a bunch of allies right now. And luckily, we didn't see the whole Rainbow Speeder gang in this episode 2, by the way. I'm actually very glad we didn't see them. We could still see them again, but we didn't see them in this episode. I'm sure it really helped the episode 2. Then we get to see Boba interacting with all of the syndicates or whatever, the groups that are involved on Tatooine or Mos Espa or something like that. And he's trying to make sure that they don't turn on him when the Pikes come to them to try and go after Boba Fett. So he's just trying to assure everyone that I don't want you turning on me when the Pikes come to you and say, let's go after Boba Fett. So he makes sure that none of them are going to turn on him because he has a Rancor. So his big threat is, I have a Rancor now, and if you turn on me, I will go after you. And maybe that's going to happen because there's rumors, and I presume he's going to be riding that Rancor in the next episodes, or just maybe in the finale or something. But he's got that Rancor now, which is super, super cool. And I think it really scared everyone into, kind of obeying Boba Fett in a way. Boba Fett's taking charge, which I love to see. I love to see Boba Fett finally taking some charge here in this show. And now I want to see him do some badass stuff too. I want to see him do some badass fight scenes, some badass action scenes, flying around in his jetpack. I want to see it, and I think we will. I think it really set that up. And I'm glad Boba Fett is in charge now. It feels like he's starting to actually be the boss. And I love that. And then we got to that whole final scene here, which was kind of the big mind-blowing thing for me. And it set something up I didn't think we'd actually see in this show. Honestly, the way the show was going, I didn't think we'd see it. But Boba and Fennec are basically interacting here at the top of Jabba's palace. They're talking about we need more allies and we need more muscle in our group to fight the Pikes. And they just kind of linger on that thought in the end, and then they pan out on Jabba's palace to Fennec and Boba to the Mandalorian theme. Yes, the theme song from the Mandalorian itself. The main titles you hear when you play the Mandalorian show. You might as well just call this Din Djarin's theme at this point. I think we are going to see Din Djarin in the Book of Boba Fett. I think we'll see him in episode 5. I think we will. Because why else would you play the Mandalorian theme at the end of the episode right after talking about you need more muscle, you need more allies to fight the Pikes? Why not bring in Din Djarin? I don't know what Din Djarin's doing right now. I know he has the Darksaber. He's with Bo-Katan. That's when we last saw him. We don't know exactly where they are now. Maybe Fennec knows because she was last with Din Djarin when we saw him last. I don't know. But I think they're really setting up to see, finally, we're going to see Mando, we're going to see Din Djarin, the Darksaber, whatever. I think Boba Fett is going to bring in Mandalorians. Not just Din Djarin, I think he's going to bring in probably a bunch of them. And I think bringing in Mandalorians to fight the Pikes, that would be really cool to see. And I think this really sets up the whole idea that this is just the Mandalorian 2.5. The Book of Boba Fett, it is its own thing in a way. It's Boba Fett's story on the side, but I think it's really just setting up the point that all these shows are supposed to be interconnected, and Dave and John are trying to set up a larger story here, and I think the Ahsoka show is also going to link up really well here, and in the end, I think we're going to get this massive big story with Thrawn. And I think that's where we're all headed. I think The Mandalorian Season 3 might even pick up from the Book of Boba Fett. Who knows? It definitely set up seeing Din Djarin or the Mandalorian himself. And I hope that's where we go. I think at this point, the show it needs it. If that's a cameo we get, I think that would be pretty cool. Because instead of bringing in a bunch of cameos that might not really matter for the show, I still want to see Cad Bane maybe. But, a cameo from Din Djarin would make a lot more sense than some random character that makes, honestly, no sense for this story. Even Han Solo doesn't really make sense for this story. But Din Djarin would. He just worked with Din Djarin, and I think bringing in Din Djarin to the show right now makes a lot of sense. And I think we can get a lot of badass scenes with Mando and Boba Fett fighting up against the Pikes, Mando with his Darksaber. I really hope they can prove themselves in the final 3 episodes of the Book of Boba Fett. We don't even know if there'll be another season, but Episode 4, a big step up from Episode 3. I was really worried in the first half there, but the second half really proved it to really set a lot of good stuff up. And I'm actually excited for this show now. I am actually hyped for the next episode. That's the first time I've been hyped for the next episode of this show. And I'm super glad that whole second half happened, because that first half before, when they were escaping from Jabba's palace with the slave one, I'm like, why? This is going so slow. I don't like this. And then it really picked up. So I like Episode 4. Go check it out. I think the Book of Boba Fett is I'm very hopeful for it now. I want to be hopeful for this show. Again, there's 3 episodes left only. Maybe it might just not do well. I don't know. But we'll have to wait and see. But I liked Episode 4.